I got a call around midnight when the news broke that they had found what appeared to be the wreckage. Been 13 months since the famed aviator had disappeared. He was on a pleasure flight, leaving from the Flying M Ranch. He was flying a friend of his, Belunca Super Decathlon. According to Mrs. Fawcett, the purpose of the flight was basically a pleasure one. One could suggest that it might have been the equivalent of a pleasant Sunday afternoon drive. Now, after the wreckage was discovered, the radar tracks identified during the original search, they were reviewed. And the radar track beginning about the time of the accident showed a target flying southbound, following the crest of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Track started about 35 miles southwest of the departure airport and ended about a mile northwest of the accident site. Early in the original search, this track was eliminated as a possibility, as its time did not agree with the time of a witness sighting that was believed to be accurate. The witness sighting was that of a Flying M employee who observed the airplane approximately 9 miles south of the departure airstrip. Regardless of that, the California CAP, Civil Air Patrol, reported that the area where the wreckage was located had been searched once by air during the original search. I can only tell you that given the features of the terrain and our experience in coming 13 months after, very, very difficult to spot the wreckage. It was discovered a half mile from the location where the hikers found some of his personal effects. The examination of the accident site revealed that the airplane collided with terrain while maneuvering in remote mountainous terrain approximately 8 miles west-northwest of Mammoth Lakes in California, and 65 miles south of the departure airport. The wreckage was located at an elevation of a little more than 10,000 feet. When we got to the site, it was very, very sparsely forested with ponderosa pines averaging 40 to 60 feet tall, numerous boulders, rock, outcrops surrounded by some grassy areas which covered the ground. Now, I hiked down from the plateau, and that wasn't easy, but hiking back, that was tough. We had a helicopter that was circling above us. It was a rescue helicopter. I don't know what they were there for, but as I continued to move up the mountain and continued to get more tired, because obviously the oxygen level up there gets very, very limited, I was hoping that they would think that I was dying and they would drop the basket. And I couldn't fool them. They did not drop the basket. I had to walk all the way back up there with the team, and they too were not in particularly good shape, and even though he'll smile and say, I was able to do it, he didn't look so good when he got up to the top of that crest either. Airplane, when we got there, was severely fragmented, and there was a severe post-crash fire. Burned most of the structure, surrounding vegetation. The first evidence of the ground contact was a boulder with paint transfers on it, consistent with the left main wheel and the belly of the aircraft. Wreckage was distributed upslope from the point of the debris field measuring 350 feet long. All the cockpit instruments in the airplane's ELT were destroyed. DNA testing recovered some very, very small skeletal fragments determined they were from the pilot. Cause of death was determined to be multiple traumatic injuries. Meteorological data indicate that about the time of the accident, downdrafts existed in the accident area, approximately 400 feet per minute. Now, we've released what I've discussed with you already in a factual report. It's on our website if you want to get more detail. And very, very shortly, we will be releasing our probable cause determination. One more launch. This one was a few weeks ago. Got launched to another tragic accident site, probably one of the most difficult for all involved, our team, first responders, because it dealt with 14 people, 7 of which were children. I got the call late on Sunday afternoon. We were told that, and I was talking to Molly this morning about initial reports of anything are normally inaccurate. We see this all the time at the NTSB. In this case, I got a call indicating that an airplane full of children had crashed short of the runway at the airport in Butte. At the time, we didn't know what kind of airplane it was, whether it was a scheduled commuter plane or a business jet or something else. And as the minutes ticked by, we continued to receive more information and more accuracy in what we were going to see out there. By the time we left on an FAA aircraft, which is a Cessna Citation, I might add, that took us out there, we learned that it was a single-engine turboprop owned by several doctors and piloted by a very experienced pilot. This man was an Air Force pilot at one time, flew 141s, and had 8,500 hours in civilian time and 2,000 hours in the aircraft that he was flying, which was a Pilatus. Airplane impacted a cemetery west of the landing runway at the airport. 7 adults, 7 children. All of the children under the age of 10. They were on their way to Bozeman, Montana to meet other family members and be part of a ski vacation. Whenever we get the initial call on these types of accidents, we conference in our regional investigators. Many of you have had an opportunity to work with our regional people. And in this case, we decided that given the nature of this accident, it was important to do a headquarters launch. The FAA comes with us as party to our investigation. We send normally, in this case, a member of the board who acts as the spokesman. We have transportation disaster people who work with the families, work with the forensic people, the coroners. We have our specialists that deal in various aspects, various disciplines, like power plant, structure, operations, weather, survivability. All of those people will come on a major launch from our headquarters. And we got to Butte at around 2 o'clock in the morning. I got a little bit of sleep and immediately went out to the site around 6:30 in the morning and waited for the sun to come up to see what we had. During the on-scene phase of the investigation, we learned that the pilot filed an instrument flight plan from Oroville, California to Bozeman, Montana, with Butte as the alternate. As the plane was cruising at about 25,000 feet, the pilot contacted ATC and requested to change his destination to Butte. He gave no reason for the diversion. And to divert to Butte, really, from where he was, wasn't going to save him very much time, and it didn't appear to be for weather reasons. This fact tells us that he had never been to Butte. It's a much smaller airport than his usual destination. He's been to Bozeman a number of times. Answering why he diverted may hold the key to what happened. Initial reports from ground witnesses indicate the plane was flying at approximately 300 feet above ground level as it approached the airport. Shortly thereafter, the airplane's nose pitched to a nose-low attitude, and it impacted the ground. It's going to be a tough one for us. We have our human performance specialist analyzing the pilot's background and his voice, which was captured on recorded air traffic control tapes. Our examination of what was left of the aircraft did not reveal any obvious pre-impact malfunctions. And as you can imagine, there was no in-flight recorders because they're not required to be on these types of aircraft, even though there were 14 people on board. Which brings me to my next topic, that of video recorders. There's no requirement. I said it, I'll say it again. Certain types of turbine aircraft are required to have a cockpit voice recorder. The rationale for this has been that these types of recorders are simply too costly, too complex, and too heavy. Well, advances now in technology have been extremely helpful in this regard. And we know that representatives have been participating since 2007 in a working group to develop a spec for lightweight flight recorders. Both the NTSB and the FAA are members of this working group, and perhaps some of you here are either part of it or have sent employees to this working group. When finalized this summer, the standard is expected to address recent improvements in the technology by establishing the minimum performance requirements for this flight recorder system that could be used on board smaller aircraft. This spec targets a more affordable flight recorder option for smaller aircraft than the traditional CDRs or the FDRs that addresses the recording of audio, image, and parametric information. Both Bell Helicopter and the American Eurocopter have developed prototype lightweight recorders that contain internal global positioning system receivers and inerting sensing electronics. They're about the size of a couple of packs of cigarettes and very affordable. Although these recorders are not designed to meet the crash-worthy requirements stipulated in the FAA's current technical standard for CVRs and FDRs, they would have a level of crash protection that meets many of the industry criteria for reliability and survivability. Companies are also expected to make kits available for retrofitting older helicopters with these recorders. Now, if recorder systems that captured cockpit audio, images, and parametric data had been installed on the Butte accident, the recorders would have enabled us to quickly determine information about the accident scenario, including precise locations, altitudes, headings, airspeeds, and extremely important, what the pilot actions were. So we've made recommendations about flight recorders to the FAA for many years. The issue has been on our most wanted list for many years, and now with the recent advent of the lightweight, inexpensive image recorders, we would like to see these items installed on aircraft to help solve accidents and make recommendations to prevent future ones. Human fatigue. Let me go through a little of that, and then what I would like to do is talk a tiny bit about our most wanted list, and then I will answer some of your questions. Human fatigue has been an issue that the board has been concerned about in all of our modes of transportation. Fatigue in transportation presents unnecessary risks to the traveling public and can impair a person behind the yoke as much as alcohol or drugs. The board continues to advocate setting work hour limits on fatigue through research, circadian rhythms, and sleep rest requirements that will reduce unnecessary risk to the traveling public.